This is a tower defense project. The game allows the user to place towers at various points on the map, and the mechs will use the Unity Nav Mesh agent to try and get to their destination. There are lots of various aspects of this that I found interesting. So the Nav Mesh agent itself, I used a different technique that allowed the mesh to be defined at a very small and fine level. This allows the mechs to maneuver over the various obstacles in a slightly more realistic way. I added some additional features to this, such as the ability to have flying targets come over and bomb your towers, which is quite good fun. It's got menu options. There are various towers, such as the missile firing tower, that had some interesting design challenges to get right, such as how the missiles fire out of the launcher, and also things that aren't just direct fire things, so like this gas tower. The other thing I added to this project whilst developing it was the concept of some editors. So here's a little Spawn editor that I used that helped me to develop it. The game uses a lot of scriptable objects that allow you to configure the various types of waves and various types of enemy that you have and the things in the armory. Overall, I was very happy with the result. My next project is Unity Exuvius. I've got a real love of old arcade games, and I was really interested to try and understand what kind of challenges there'd be in taking a game, and in this case 1982 Exuvius, and implementing it in Unity. There's quite a lot of interesting challenges that came out of it. Certainly there's different ways of handling sprites, from the sort of classic ways of doing things like animating using palettes. And in Unity you don't really do that, you use animation controllers. So it's some interesting issues to get through, but overall I was quite pleased with the result. Challenges such as getting these little land vehicles to move on what would seemingly move on the road, but they're not really. They're just using a system of waypoints and local transformations in order to produce that effect. The game's actually running here with the player in unbeatable mode, so none of the shots are hitting them. But there's interesting challenges around getting this to work. Overall, I'm quite pleased with it. It feels very similar to the original. There are some differences. I know of some differences, but as you're playing it, unless you're a real knowledgeable Exuvius fan, you wouldn't really notice. I love these flying concrete slab things. They were great fun. I used to really enjoy those when I played it originally. So yeah, going from those days where I used to just come home from the arcade and draw these out on a bit of graph paper to actually seeing them work, it's taken quite a few years to get there. But yeah, I'm quite pleased with the result. Different sorts of ships coming in, little animations, and they fly away. It's all good fun. using various bits of, sort of basic object orientation to do different types of enemies, so only override different behaviours when needed to. And then eventually we go through different sorts of enemies. Here's one that's particularly fiery. Get rid of him. And we go through the different levels. The different levels are loaded in one at a time, so that would allow for streaming over the internet, which is quite a nice idea. And I implemented that using... I haven't actually implemented that using any kind of addressables or anything like that. That's just purely loading them in at a time, but that's kind of where I want to take it. And eventually get the big bad boss. This was always really difficult in the arcade. Yeah, my version doesn't fire as much. I probably need to tweak that a bit. It's a bit easy in my version. There it goes, destroyed. And that's where I've finished with it for the moment. Except I've now tried to bring it into 2021 by making it a network game. So this is my very initial early draft at getting that running. It doesn't actually work. It just sort of shows you the fact that it is mirroring. So you've got 2 players and the second player can see what the first player is doing. So that's the start of my networking journey in Exuvius. Another classic retro game was Time Pilot. And I was very interested in the mechanics of this, the way in Time Pilot the player stays central and everything moves around it, and also the fact that the clouds are on parallax layers. So I had a go at implementing that, and that also turned out quite well. OBS is a cross-platform application I wrote in Unity. It's based on XAML UI patterns. It will be responsive, so it will work on phone or desktop applications. The user can edit, add, or change the type of scene that they want to manage from OBS. The mechanism itself is based on XAML binding, so I wrote my own binding framework that enable you to bind things like the text and the images to models that's drawn from the OBS server. So overall, it worked quite well and is available on the Android store. So I have some game jam projects. The first one was, can I get a rewind? And the idea here was to have a couple of decks, and it was a kind of sound-based game. So as the music plays, it's visualized and you can also hear it. But then on one deck you can kind of DJ and change the point of where the music is. and that would happen when you were asked to do a rewind. You'd spin the decks around, and then the other half is matching the pictures that come along with the item on the deck. So there's various aspects of the game in that. It was just a silly little game. And the other game jam was something called Delivery Cannon, and this was a fixed set of assets that you had to use, and just about the time of lockdown, so I decided to make a game based on delivering things from a distance via a cannon. So you're in a supermarket and you are firing food at the people that want it, and if it's the wrong food, then you have to cancel it so it goes back on the belt. And that was the kind of basic premise of this, and because it was fixed assets, I couldn't animate quite as well as I wanted to, so there's a bit of sort of clashing of graphics, but overall I thought it was quite a fun game. It also uses a PlayFab service to have an internet-based high score table, so there's a little bit of extra work to get that to work correctly. But yeah, it's quite fun. There are some little hidden extras in here, but I won't tell you what they are. You can find them for yourself if you wish to go and play it. So more recently, I've been working with virtual reality with the Oculus Quest 2.
All right, cadet.
And in this challenge,
there
is like a kind of what I call a ghost train game. So you're in a fixed situation and you have to make decisions and solve little puzzles. But ultimately, you're taken from one part of the scene to the next. And there's lots of little additional extras I've added in here. So originally it's just a pair of hands with the Oculus, so I've created a full body avatar. I did a lip sync actor that we just saw there on the screen. But basically you just sort of push buttons and you can interact with the scenery. So here we're going to drink some space coffee. Obviously in space you don't get nice liquid, you get sort of little blobs of liquid.
The computer will guide you through getting the
put that into your mouth glider and sip that coffee.
Should be flashing on the console ahead of
you
right
just cut
about
through
now.
To other
Don't
scenes
to divert pressure
where
to the fuel
I think
pump.
there's slightly more noteworthy. You can see the full body avatar there in the sort of dash cam. So that was quite good fun to set that up. Little extra thing, little dashboard toy to play with.
Now just reboot the new reactor
And then one of the
and
puzzles
we
is
can
just
get
sort
you
of
out of
fixing this
here.
reactor, so we're almost at the end of the game at this point. So we start this reactor, and then our little warp drive can start up. And we're going to walk back to the fleet. At which point we can take over control of the ship.
Welcome back,
It's the
cadet.
first time you
Glad
can do
to
that
see
in
you
the
in one piece.
game.
Flight
You
control
use the
deck
throttle and the
isn't
joystick.
expecting
It's
you
all
back
controlled
until
by your own
2200.
hands.
I'll
can
look the other
fly
way if you
around.
want to take the controls until then. Re-engage the autopilot when you're finished. And that whole asteroid field mishap, it never happened.